Hello, 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 everybody. It's oh my goodness, it's Tuesday, and I am sat here with my friend and legendary. I don't. Are you the founder or the lead? I know you're the lead, but did you also found the JRuby project?
I came to the project a little bit after it had been created, but it was kind of dormant, and
Sure.
we've essentially rewritten the whole thing in that amount of time. So
Okay. Whoa, wow. So when did you? I mean, this is so you're the lead, de facto, if nothing else, and
sure,
um, I don't know if they're. I don't know how. Let's talk. I have so many questions. Where do we start? First of all, can you introduce yourself? I'm butchering it. Help me out.
sure. I am currently leading the JRuby project. The other co-lead, Tom Annabo, is kind of taking a hiatus for now. Uh, I am also serving as the chief technologist at Hedius Enterprises, where we provide professional commercial support for JRuby users, all the way from a friendly ear. You can toss me an email, and I'll send you my advice back up to full support, full SLAs for releases, bug fixes, security, and all that. So it's a lot of work going on both sides of that.
Yeah, and so that project was, I guess it was like early 2000s when it was started, and then as you say, it fell into a state of sort of dormancy.
Correct. Yes.
What were you doing at the time? You know, how did you find it? What is what's your path in early 2000s for? Because I mean,
Yes.
Ruby itself is just it's like 1998, right? It's not even that old.
Yeah. So what my path to Ruby basically, I started out in the early days of Java, 1995, 96, doing applets for my university as a part-time job, and slowly working towards building Java-based student services and whatnot for the university. That became my first full-time job. Eventually progressing through the years up to 2004, where I was a full Java EE architect. I'd reached the pinnacle of Java EE
XML.
development, the top of the line.
Sure.
And then I ended up doing a contract where I was traveling out to the Washington D.C. area, and one of those trips happened to coincide with RubyConf 2004. So the conference was recommended to me by a friend. I knew nothing about Ruby, but I thought I'd stop by. It was like $50. There were 60 people there. I mean, it was a little deal. But I was sitting there in this conference, not knowing this language and understanding every slide, every piece of code, being able to read all of this and understand it just kind of blew my mind. And so I thought, I'm a Java guy. I would love to be able to use this Ruby thing. So I started looking around to see if anything existed, if there's any sort of like JRuby sort of project out there.
Right.
And it turned out that JRuby actually had been created in about 2001. It was way behind current compatibility. There were only a couple folks working on it. And I figured I'd just start picking it up and see what I could make it do.
Wow. And so it was just did you found it at a show? Did you then? I guess you like I read the pickaxe book, right? Uh,
Yes.
that's my first intro to Ruby proper. Uh, and I remember Matt's did a an article for Dr. Dobbs, maybe, right? Dr. Dobbs programming
Yep.
journal, um, like in the late 90s, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was just a
The
sort of like very interesting language, you know?
Yeah, the language was first created. The first release of it was around the same time as Java, 1995 or so.
Yeah.
But it really had only started to pick up steam early 2000s when some English publications started to come out about the language. And then you started getting towards 2003, 2004. At that RubyConf 2004, there were two particularly interesting talks. One was from a fellow named David Heinemeier Hansen,
Oh, him.
presenting Rails for the first time at
Right.
RubyConf, and it was amazing to see what he was doing with it at that point. Also, the other major talk that got its hooks into me was Koichi Sasada, who was rewriting the standard, the CRuby runtime with a bytecode engine and some optimizations. And both of those talks kind of inspired me. Number one, there's a lot more we could do with Ruby. If they're building
Yeah.
this into a full VM, well, I already know the JVM really well. What if we could make Ruby take advantage of what the JVM has available? And the sell for it, the key point, if we could bring something like Rails to that larger community, to that Java community, and
Yeah.
show them what they're missing out on, the two just kind of came together and made JRuby really succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I don't want to speak because I feel like maybe I'm misinformed, or maybe the facts on the ground have changed. For a while, maybe it's still true, and I don't doubt that it's still true. For a while, JRuby had a much better performance story in terms of scalability and threading and so on. Is that still true? I mean, I don't know where things are
Yeah,
in native
that's
Ruby.
still generally true. JRuby, the goal for JRuby is to try and make the best JVM Ruby as possible. We're not building a completely new runtime. We're not going to build our own garbage collector or our own native JIT. We leverage
Right.
what the JVM does for us as well as we can. And as the JVM evolves, JRuby evolves. We were able to take advantage of Invoke Dynamic when that came around. We're now able to take advantage of Project Loom and virtual threads. We're going to be taking advantage of Project Laden and ahead of time compilation and startup and warm up improvements for JRuby.
Right.
All of that just feeds directly into JRuby ecosystem, the users. And
Right.
we still generally run things faster. At a certain point, we run things with less memory because CRuby usually has to fork off multiple processes. You end up getting too many processes in memory. We have some flexibility in the size of objects in memory now with things like Project Lilliput,
The
just doing our own
compact
internal
object headers.
shrinking. Yeah, exactly. There's so many things that we're getting from the platform that it is difficult for them to keep up with that. And we're going to keep trying to push the edges of what JRuby and the JVM can do.
Yeah, and I wonder, I don't know, does Ruby have something like an async await or a non-blocking IO story?
They do have some non-blocking IO stories. They're just now starting to play with actually being able to run some of that stuff in parallel. Uh,
Oh,
the
so they have a
non-blocking
GIL.
stuff, right? Yeah, they still have the GIL, the global VM lock, but they are starting to work on sort of mini VMs where you can toss it off to the side. It will do some isolated work in parallel and then feed results back. Actor like
Yeah.
deployment that lets you get a little bit more parallelism. But JRuby, of course, being on the JVM, you want to run in parallel. You just spin up another thread and you've got it. It's fully parallel, and we take advantage of that all the time.
Does that mean that are there libraries in the Ruby community that depend upon, for example, never actually being concurrent, that might break on the JVM because they can be concurrent?
In the early days, yes, that was definitely a problem. And a big part of working on JRuby has been simply educating the Ruby community about thread safe programming. Most of the bugs that you would see from unsafe code running on JRuby were still theoretically possible on CRuby. They just were a little bit less common because of the global lock.
Right.
Things like two threads updating a hash. You're going to get inconsistent results if you're not synchronizing those accesses, whether you're on CRuby or JRuby.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, actually, what does the Ruby SDK even have the equivalent of like a current concurrent hash map? Why would it if it's never possible for more than one thread to ever modify it in the first
Exactly.
place?
Yeah,
Oh,
there are
interesting.
some expectations, some general expectations of thread safety with hashes, but it doesn't have anything like atomic writes and atomic updates as part of any of the specification. We have worked with other folks in the community to spin up additional libraries. There's a library called Concurrent Ruby that basically ships all of the concurrency utilities you can imagine from other runtimes. We've got the full set of concurrent collections. We've got atomic references. We've got the equivalent of promises. All of those things, written in the proper way to run well on Ruby and JRuby and other implementations.
Oh, And so they can be used in a portable way too. Oh,
Yes.
interesting. And so are those shims for existing facilities in the SDK, or are they completely separate primitives that you either know you're using them or you're not, but it's not like you could accidentally use them? Like, is it a separate API service area?
There is, yeah, it's a separate API. We try to mimic the core Ruby collections as much as possible, so everything at
Yeah.
least feels the same. But you can basically swap in a concurrent hash for your use of a regular hash and know that it'll be fully thread safe. Plus, you get some of those atomic operations that are really hard to emulate on regular Ruby.
I see. Does that back like if I use that within JRuby, does it just point to a concurrent hash map, or is it
In a
actually
lot of
re-implemented
cases,
from?
yeah, it does. You look at
Okay.
the JRuby code versus the equivalent C code that was written for the C Ruby runtime. And
Right.
in most cases, the JRuby code just uses existing JVM features,
Yeah.
existing atomic references, existing collections, all of that stuff is available for us. So some of them, there's not even any Java code. It's just a bit of Ruby code
Right.
that calls into a concurrent hash, and that's all
Right.
that's required of it.
Yeah. I was gonna say because in C you have very little in the way of memory models. Right. There's
Mm,
nothing there. There's
yeah.
no guarantee from one compiler to another, let alone one operating system to another, what it means to have this, two reads from the same field or whatever, and after a write. And then I guess C Ruby, well, they just sidestepped the issue, didn't they? So they don't have a memory model because why would they? There's no such thing as concurrent access anyway.
Right.
So I can only imagine the C Ruby implementation of the concurrent map is something to behold. A
Right,
lot
exactly.
of moving parts.
This has been an interesting process over the years. We were screaming for things like atomic references and
Yeah.
concurrent collections and stuff back in 2005, 2006 when we started working on this stuff. And just in the last maybe 5 years, now that they're starting to play with concurrency and real parallelism, have they started to formalize some of the internal memory model of Ruby? They've been forced to do this now after so many years because they just relied on it being a single thread all the time. They didn't
Right.
have to worry about those things in the past.
And in the node world, and I don't mean to darken your doorstep with that name, but they have process-based multi-threading. Same thing for Python. You can do sub-processing. And so there you could actually have concurrent threads, but it's super painful to mutate a single variable in most cases.
Right. Yeah, and
So
Ruby up to now has largely been that way too. You could fork off a separate process, you could use sub processes, and then communicate over pipes or something. But actual shared memory parallelism was and still is very difficult. And even with the newer features, they call it Ractor. So a Ruby actor basically is the new
cool.
parallelism construct on Ruby. When you work with Ractors, you need to be only passing immutable data around because the VM simply has no mechanisms to cope with shared mutable memory, even at this point.
I mean, it worked for Erlang, so
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And if
maybe
they can
it's
make that boundary fast enough, passing things across that boundary to be quick, right
yeah.
now I think it's doing things like a full copy of your object graph from one heap to another. So, parse JSON in parallel really fast, but then of course you've got several megabytes or dozens of megabytes of data that you now need to pass back to a master thread, and it all has to be copied or something. So those are the problems they're still kind of dealing with.
So has anybody ever tried to go the other way instead of like having a multi-threaded aware uh, portability abstraction like the thing you described? Has anybody ever tried to just enforce a GIL on the JVM on JRuby?
I think we did. We actually had a joke issue or a joke
No.
feature for JRuby for a long time, and a couple different people have come in and submitted a joke patch that would basically lock JRuby down to a single thread. Nothing that we would ever actually consider, but it's
Right.
been fun to
Well,
kind of say,
compatibility mode.
hey, if we want to be fully compatible, let's just
Yeah.
also introduce a global lock into JRuby.
Oh, God. Well, that's what I kind of wondered about uh, is there a T does JRuby adhere? Is there like a TCK equivalent? I don't know. Does Ruby even have one? And
Yeah,
does
so
that
this is
break?
also something, the fact that we were kind of the first Ruby implementation, other than the main one back in 2004 and 5, meant that there were not a lot of specifications. There were very few test suites. We ran everything we could find, including a kind of partial test suite that was written for the pickaxe book. Just as they were working through examples, they built up a little test suite for Ruby behavior. These days, though, there is an official ISO spec for the base Ruby language, and there
Huh.
is a common set of specification tests that all of the implementations contribute to and work to pass as much as as close to 100% as possible. So it's gotten a lot better over the years, but it's taken a long time to go from essentially an unspecified language to having all of the tests and specifications we need to say we're compatible.
Right. Well, can I ask? I mean, how far along is how far along is JRuby in that benchmark?
So the specification suite is split up into three major areas. The core language features, and JRuby is in like a 98, 99% passing range on that stuff. The remaining things are either features that no one uses or that are simply incompatible with the JVM. In the core classes, the core string, array, hash, and so on, we are in the high 90s, probably 95, 96% passing of that functionality. And then there's a test of the standard libraries. Most of those, we run the exact same Ruby.
What is what I mean, why like where did you were at Sun, right? You were at you were independent and then you joined Sun working on JRuby, or were you working on JRuby after you joined Sun?
Yeah, so I was working as enterprise architect on government contracts when I found Ruby and JRuby.
Yeah.
And we got our major product into production. Everything was good. The whole thing kind of went into maintenance mode at that point. And I was spending evenings and weekends hacking away on JRuby, mostly because we thought it would be really cool if we could get Rails to run, just to show that it was possible to bring this to the JVM. We managed to do that. Spring of 2006, we managed to get the first Rails request to run on a very early version, like version 1.2 of Rails or something.
Yeah.
That got noticed by folks at Sun, specifically Tim Bray, who was doing a lot of push
XML.
for, yeah, of course, doing a lot of push for alternative languages on the JVM, the polyglot story for the
Yeah.
JVM.
Did
And
he
so he arranged for us to get into Sun Microsystems that later that year.
was Tim involved in what would eventually become Invoke Dynamic? I mean, that was a 2008 or whatever. I mean, Java 7,
I would say
2006.
Tim was kind of a facilitator. He hooked us up with the right people. He realized that this could be a big thing, having all of these other languages. And this was very early. This was before Scala was a thing. This was before Clojure was a thing. We were one of the first ones. Us and Groovy were kind of the two big languages that people were using.
Yeah.
Jython was still out there, but was kind of losing maintenance, was getting left behind a little bit. But JRuby and Groovy were the two big ones at that time. So we joined Sun, and he made sure that we got the resources and the connections within the company to make it go even better and get things like Invoke Dynamic out there.
Wow. And so you were at Sun from, and I remember this is, I joined I started I was working my first job in IT was in 2002. I like your poster, by the way. IT conquered the world.
Yes.
And 2002, so this is right around then. I'm starting to pay attention. Before that I was just learning, but I was now working on it, and I'm I don't know what it is, but I think that the first year of having the first year I remember working, when you're studying something, you're only doing it part-time. It's not your focus entirely. You're not writing code 10 hours a day in earnest, in anger, as we say. And then suddenly I had a job, whereas I was doing it every day, all day, even some weekends, full time, and suddenly, I'm no longer questioning my ability to write code that does the thing in time, and so suddenly I realized, okay, I can venture out, expand my horizons a little bit. And so I remember being the first year of having of working in software was for me the beginning of a renaissance period where I started to look at other things, and I found Spring that same way, and not too long thereafter I found JRuby, thanks to you and the team. And I just remember thinking, this is really interesting. I mean, and at the time people were dismissive of the prospects of a multi-language polyglot community on top of the JVM. I would dare say we've probably got more languages on the JVM that are being used in earnest by large communities than .NET does at this point, even though it was built with express intent of supporting that use case,
Yeah, absolutely. We actually were good friends with a lot of the folks at Microsoft that worked on the DLR, the dynamic language runtime that they were
Right.
building on top of CLR. Good friends, of course, with the Iron Ruby folks and traded ideas back and forth. I knew some of the folks that were working on Iron Python and the other languages. And it's really a shame that so much of that Microsoft put a lot of time and money into that effort,
Right.
but when they kind of ran out, that all died. DLR died. All the Iron languages kind of died off. I think maybe Iron Python might be a little bit going still, but luckily with JRuby, we managed to build up a large community outside of that corporate world and folks
Yeah.
that would continue to contribute and keep the project going. We never were Sun's implementation of Ruby. We were
Right.
the JVM Ruby that everyone could contribute to and be part of. And I think that
I
helped keep these languages going.
I agree. I from my perspective from the outside, that's what it seemed like. I only by like that's why I'm asking about these questions about the time at Sun now, and not so much the questions about JRuby at the time, because I understood JRuby at the time, but I did not understand its interactions with Sun Microsystems. You were there for a good many years, it feels like, and then I remember there was was it right after the Oracle thing, or was it before? I mean, did you survive into the Oracle years?
So we were at Sun, we started in 2006. We stuck around until about 2009 when the Oracle transition was happening. And we never actually were officially part of Oracle.
Okay.
We just got to a point where one of the Jython guys was working with us as part of our general language team, and he got let go during that process. And we couldn't get any answers from management about what JRuby's future was going to be at Sun Microsystems. And another opportunity came up, and so you got to kind of go with what you know is going to be a stable option. So we made a move to Engine Yard, which was a big Ruby company at the time, to get JRuby into their cloud. And it made sense to kind of make that transition from we've been building JRuby for all these years. Now let's do something to put it in front of people more directly.
Oh, wow. You were at Engine Yard. Um, wow. I didn't realize that. How long were you there? That's
Engine
okay.
Yard, I think, was another 3 years. We spent the first year and a half, 2 years working with their ops team to get JRuby as an offering as part of their Ruby SaaS, essentially. And then 3 years into that, the work was kind of done. And there were a bunch of folks at Red Hat that were doing cool things with Ruby and JRuby. And so we made the move to Red Hat in 2012.
Wow. Did you ever get what was Ezra's web framework?
Oh, Ezra, MERB.
MERB. Did that work on
Yes,
JRuby?
it did. And because of the way it was designed, it was actually it had performed much better and did much better parallelism and concurrency than
Wow.
Rails did at the time. And it ran great on JRuby. They used us as a test case to make sure that things stayed thread safe. And eventually, when that merged back into Rails, I think a lot of the essence of what was there survived. And Rails continues to be a solid concurrent web framework for JRuby. And we got a lot of
I
production users doing that right now.
I knew Ezra through he joined VMware, right? And
Right.
small world, and he, rest in peace, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice
Yeah. He
guy.
was he was a very interesting creative guy. And it was fun to have a little bit of time to work with him while we were at engineering.
I completely had no idea you were an engineer. How did I? My brain is not good. Okay, full disclosure. So okay, so engine, and then you went to Red Hat, and they, that was a much longer run. It feels like.
Yep. Yeah, we were at Red Hat for 12 years. And again, in each case, at Engineered, we were nominally responsible for helping the ops team get JRuby in production, but it was still largely at all of these positions a sponsorship of the open source project. They were hiring 2 developers to continue working on this project. If we could help the company use it, if we could help get it out in front of people, get it into products, all the better. But it was largely Red Hat, Sun, Engineered sponsoring the JRuby project for those years. So then we were at Red Hat for about 12 years. And that's a great run. We were very happy to have that sponsorship for so many years.
Yep.
In 2024, the sponsorship kind of ran out. And so we've been going independent since then and keeping it going the classic open source way.
Well, that's good. I mean, thank you to Sun, Engineered, and Red Hat for their patronage. Obviously, big thanks to that.
For sure.
Now you're and you've been going at well, not alone. You've got co-conspirators. That doesn't sound like the right word. Collaborators.
Yes, collaborators. We have collaborators.
Yeah, that's the word. What is a brain? No, so you've got other people working with. You've been going it alone since 2024. Now you're at. You said, like I said, it says right there, CTO of Hedius Enterprises. Before I move on, what does Hedius mean?
Hedius is it's a handle that I picked up in the early 90s in the bulletin board times. Like first time I logged on to a bulletin board system, it asked me for a nickname, and I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. I looked around my room and I had a poster, a promotional poster from Levi's that they did a series of caricatures of different music fans. And so like they had a caricature of a rap fan and a caricature of a heavy metal fan. And then they gave them these sort of fake Latin names underneath them on a badge. And the metal guy that I had on my wall was Hedius Bang Metallum. And so I just picked the first part of that and turned it into a nickname, and it's stuck with me for the past 35 years or so now.
That's probably the best nickname story ever. That is, you win. I can't. There's nothing to add to that. Well done. Okay, just wanted to know. All these years, I wondered about that. I have you and I have a mutual friend in the force of nature that is John Davies.
Yes.
One of my happiest memories is banging around. I think we were in Norway. I don't remember, with you and John eating kebabs and just taking in the wonderful city in the nighttime.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so I guess that brings us to the next question. Here we are in modern day. I got so many questions. First of all, how do people engage with you if they want to like sponsor or pay you? What is the thing they're paying for,
Right. So we have a full menu of options at hedius.com, services for people that are running JRuby. They range all the way from our low-level pro subscription, which is essentially you can email with me directly and I'll give you advice. You tell me what your architecture looks like and I'll let you know what I think of it. Up to an expert level package where we give you SLAs on security updates, security disclosures, promises of monthly bug fixes and releases to get stuff out for you. All those things that companies they need if they want to put something in production and know that they can keep it stable.
Yeah.
And then additional custom packages above that. If you are doing a big migration from an old version of JRuby to a new one, our team will help advise and make sure that everything goes smoothly. So all the things that you would want for this runtime that you build your entire business on top of,
sure,
that's what we provide.
And it's very rare somebody, because let me try again. One of the things I love about Java is that if I write my program today and just wait, it will in defiance of all expectations, get faster and more scalable. I just have to wait.
Yes.
I can do nothing to it and just redeploy it on the newest JVM some years down the line, and it'll get better. I imagine that feeling is even more intense for people who've taken their Ruby application from CRuby to JRuby. I mean, I imagine it must be a very gratifying, satisfying moment for them to see this application spin up and run circles around the previous incarnation running over there.
Yeah, it is, especially folks that have really highly concurrent systems. They've got thousands of users. They need to process thousands of data streams. They've got big data, all that stuff. They take it over to JRuby and they're just shocked with how
Wow.
much better things run, how fast things run. And even within JRuby version to version, we continue to make improvements in JRuby internals. We continue to
Sure.
optimize the runtime, take better advantage of the JVM. So we have folks that will upgrade from JRuby 9.4 to 10, the next big release, and see 30-40% reduction in latency and better throughput and lower memory use. Like it's
For
just
free.
follow along with
Yeah.
JRuby and you will get the benefits.
And I guess I would put it to people like this: if you have a choice between running 5 instances of your service and paying Amazon the money or whoever, or just paying Mr. Nutter here, I think for me it's a pretty easy choice. I'd pay you,
Oh, for
obviously.
sure. Yeah,
Um,
we've had stories from folks that took applications running on regular Ruby using like 20 extra large instances on EC2 and dropping them down to like 10 medium instances. So we're talking tens of thousands of dollars of savings just by making that transition to a runtime that takes better advantage of the resources.
wow. And I, like you said, it's getting better every day. What are your thoughts around Valhalla? Like, is there a story there for JRuby? Could there be? I know you mentioned compact object headers. Um,
Yep, we follow all of the JVM projects because every single one of them, as a language runtime, we can take advantage of. There's a way that we can pass on those benefits to Ruby users. It makes perfect sense.
your speaking and your advocacy, your engagement in Invoke Dynamic is why I learned about it, not through the
Oh,
Java team.
sure.
Like I learned about it through you because you've been such a, cutting edge, legendary engineer. Sorry,
Absolutely.
carry on.
We were the first major project to ship with support for Invoke Dynamic. Even before the feature had been fully shipped, we had gated branches in our system that would say, okay, if Invoke Dynamic is available, we'll use it for optimization. But we've
Yeah.
been pushing and following that for years. We also, years ago, I did a talk at the JVM Language Summit about all the things that we need to make a language like Ruby run well on the JVM. Dynamic language support, dynamic dispatch was one of the first ones. Having lightweight threading, as in virtual threads in Loom, was another. Having access to native libraries without going through
Right.
JNI was another. One by one, each of these things that I presented in I think 2013 or so has
Right.
come true. It's come to the JVM.
Right.
And now with Valhalla, the big thing that we're excited about are having true value objects that we can use for all of our whole numeric tower in JRuby. So when you have a floating point object or an integer object, we can make those into value types and pay none of the object cost, but
Right.
still fit into a dynamic language that works with everything as an object. And it's really exciting to see the VM just evolved to support JRuby as we were doing this.
That's I mean, imagine using. Oh, that's so crazy. Imagine having value types in a scripting language. I don't even understand what a sentence. I mean, having it in a enterprise systems. I mean, I wouldn't call I mean, I don't know what the distinction anymore is, but I guess Java technically is more like a scripting language than not. Um, but it doesn't feel like it. You know what I'm saying? It feels like a
Right.
systems programming language, even though I would never write a kernel extension with it. But but the the idea that I could like, get that kind of like performance out of Ruby just because of something happening that might happen in Java 28. That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's
What's your
really
policy?
exciting.
Sorry,
Go
I didn't mean
ahead.
to cut you off. what's your policy on the latest and greatest versions of Java? Obviously, JRuby does not exist to make Java look great. It's not the point. But do you maintain a number of n revisions back that you support, or do you wait 6 months before people can upgrade to the newest version of the JVM, or etc.?
Right. So just recently, we end of life JRuby 9.4, which was the last version that still supported Java 8. And it was time. We had to hold back on using a lot of new features. Like there's almost nothing in
Right.
Java 8. We couldn't use
Yeah.
Loom, we couldn't use Panama, we couldn't do any of those cool things unless we
Right.
put complicated gates around it. So JRuby 10 made the decision, the hard break, to go all the way to Java 21, which got
Good for
us
you.
Loom and got us some Panama stuff. We always continue to test on whatever the current versions, all the way up to the current versions of the JDK in our CI, and we support any of those versions. If you want to run JRuby on Java 26, it should work great, and if it doesn't, I'll fix it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, so you've got Java 21 compatibility, and like you said, you do support. Do you do like what happens with Valhalla? Will you dynamically adapt to support value types if they're there, and just do the old thing if not?
Right. So one thing that we're hoping is that the way value types get introduced will fit okay with a separate branch within JRuby. So in one
Okay.
case, we create the classic objects for an integer or a float and just pay the object cost and try to reduce that as much as possible. But all of JRuby internals work against a common object interface that we have in the system, a Ruby
Right.
object interface. So as long as value types implement that interface,
Right.
ideally the VM should still be able to optimize them away, optimize those objects away, and the rest of the JRuby runtime doesn't have to do anything different. It still just looks like a JRuby object.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Jeez. Oh man, this is like, I mean, good object-oriented design. Ruby is a more powerful object-oriented language. That's another thing I always kind of do. You mentioned invoke dynamic a couple of times here, and one of the reasons I think that was you. What is that? Let's say let me go. I want to go back to that because it just occurred to me. Maybe people don't appreciate it. In Ruby, it's more like small talk, right? You have message dispatch
Right.
as opposed to method invocation, right? You can send a message to an object in Ruby and it's dynamic, even up to the point of the invocation as to who will answer. Is that true?
Yes, yes. And I think people don't even, if you don't use Ruby, and even if you do use Ruby, you may not realize how dynamic the language is. So,
Yeah.
of course, there's no declaring types, there's no type inference, there's no static types involved. Everything is done by sending a message to an object. And any object that responds to that message can pass through that code and should be able to work properly. But even beyond that, there's no declaration of fields on an object or on a class. You say that you want to write to a field, and the VM needs to make sure that it's available. That write might show up later. That write might show up dynamically, and we have to be able to adapt internally. Constants, like just the name of a class that's a string or array, those are dynamically discovered at runtime. They're not static.
Really?
Like in Java. So all of these things combine together to basically make it almost all of the JRuby code that we emit, almost all the byte code we emit has invoke dynamic all over the place.
Right.
For field access, for method calls, for constants, we use invoke dynamic as a way to teach the JVM about each of these little dynamic pieces and show it how to make them static. That's the real trick. It's essentially a way that we can reprogram the JVM and give it new capabilities and new ways of doing method invocation, new ways of looking up values, but show it exactly how you go find that dynamic method, how you call it, and bind it in there as if it was static to begin with.
Right, because oh wow. So invoke dynamic is kind of your router.
Absolutely. I use a telephone switchboard
Right.
as an example. We basically are the switchboard operator is how we program the JVM and say, okay, you've got a call here. It needs to go through this process to find the eventual method on this side. Now tie all that together and optimize it. And it's gotten better and better over the years.
Does the JVM then, once you've made that connection, once a route has been established, can the JVM then reify that, or does it have to constantly go through invoke dynamic?
It reifies it beautifully. We use all of it, what we have with the invoke dynamic. The other half is their invoke dynamic bytecode, and then there's the method handle API. The method handle API is essentially just a set of functional blocks that you can use to teach the JVM how to make this call. There's things like dynamic call sites. There's like reordering arguments. There's converting arguments. All of those things get smashed together, put into that call site, that invoke dynamic, and then optimized as if it was just part of the static code. So we can see basically dynamic calls, dynamic lookups of values turned directly into raw assembly with no dynamic calls, no method lookups, none of that. All inlines. We've got Ruby inlining into Java, Java inlining into Ruby. All these dynamic field updates just go straight to the object directly without doing any of the lookup stuff. It's really just magic to see it all work together.
It really is. And so many moving parts in your typical system. I think a lot of people don't even, with JRuby, you don't even know that there is this incredible ocean of dynamism between what you've written in Ruby and what the JVM can actually tolerate.
Absolutely. And it's fun to see the invoke dynamic feature being used more and more for Java, the language now. Things like lambdas that are dynamically instantiated, dynamically created at runtime, and then bound with invoke dynamic so that they're a fast function from then on.
Really?
String interpolation now has an invoke dynamic feature so that it will pick the exact shape of your string buffer, basically, and optimize it for whatever you're putting together in your string plus string plus string. All of these new features that couldn't be done without invoke dynamic.
But so it allows them to preserve the dynamism that we had before, but now it gives the JVM a way to reify it once it's been decided.
Exactly. Wow. Rather than trying to like play weird tricks with object orientation and sort of get it to inline and pray that it will inline the code, we directly tell the JVM, you can inline all of this together. And all of this stuff that we're doing in the middle with strings or with looking up methods, just inline all of that and then optimize the whole thing together.
So cool. And you get that all from Java and JRuby. That's amazing. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to backtrack. We were talking about Valhalla, which is the future. It's not that far in the future, is it? It's I guess for 7 to 8 months away. I mean,
yeah, in theory, that's what it's supposed to be, Java 28.
For a preview feature, but still, it'll be here in some capacity, some form. What's the state of the art today for JRuby? Are people using it with Ruby on Rails? I guess you spend a lot of time in straddling both communities, right? I see you a lot on the JVM ecosystem, right? And a lot of those conferences. But also, I guess I can see right behind you, you've got the JRuby conf, posters there. Do you spend a lot of time in the JRuby conferences and the Ruby conferences? And who are your customers? Are they people trying to make like JVM workloads run? They want to write them in Ruby, or are they Ruby applications that want to be run on the JVM? Like, which one do you see more of?
So as far as the two communities, when I go to Java events, Java conferences, usually I'm talking about the technology that underlies JRuby, how we've done what we've done, how we use invoke dynamic, how we use things like Project Loom as an example of what's possible. And some of my favorite talks have basically just been breaking down how invoke dynamic and method handles work, because most people never play with that and never realize how powerful that stuff is.
Right.
On the Ruby side, I am selling the JVM to Rubyists and showing them, all these features that we've been promised in Ruby, or all these things that you feel like you've been missing for years. We have this. You can come over to JRuby and have full parallelism, all of these tools,
friction-free, basically.
basically for free, and you just have to move your Ruby code over to JRuby. The customers that we get from those events, there's a large portion of them are running Rails apps.
Sure.
There are folks even building new Rails apps, and they start with JRuby because they know they're going to need it. But we also get a number of folks that are using JRuby as a front-end language for a larger Java app, embedded into that application, using JRuby as essentially the language that they give to feature designers in a program. They've got a large Java ecosystem or a large Java application, and then individual users can extend that application using Ruby and JRuby as an embedded language, basically.
Kind of like
so it runs a wide range of uses. It's basically anybody who wants to be able to use Ruby or give Ruby to their developers and customers, but still wants the ecosystem of the JVM and the reliability of that platform.
Okay. Now, honesty is the best policy here. Can you tell me where people are going to hit bumps in the road going in either direction? Like if I'm trying to use the JVM ecosystem and write Ruby code, where might I experience friction? And vice versa. If I've got a Ruby app and I want to run on the JVM, where might I experience friction? If there's any.
So the first thing I would say is that the people that come from JVM languages, Java primarily, to JRuby, they've already seen something in Ruby that they like. Something about the language, something about the ecosystem that they want to use. The biggest difficulty in transition is the fact that we don't really have like a compiled class on the file system. You don't declare all of your fields. You don't have all the static types. It's mostly that transition from a static language to a dynamic language.
Right.
Once you make that transition and you realize you can still call all of those same Java libraries from Ruby, then suddenly the expressiveness of the language really takes over, and you realize I can basically write almost natural language and do all the things that I used to do with a bunch of boilerplate and declarations in Java. That's what really hooks people, and why we have people continue to build stuff in Ruby alongside their large Java application. Coming the other direction, for people that are in the C Ruby world and want to make the transition to JRuby, the biggest bump that they hit is some dependence on a native library, native extension written specifically for regular Ruby. So somebody decides to wrap the new image format of the day, or somebody decides to build an optimized algorithm in C and only hook it up to the regular runtime.
All right.
In almost every case, we have an equivalent library on the JVM that they could use, or we have things like Panama and the JRuby equivalent FFI that lets you call those C libraries. And so it's just a bit of a transition to switch from using the C extension on the C Ruby side to basically programmatically wiring up those libraries with Panama.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you. We talked about this before, I think years ago, for whatever reason. We talked about there's JNI, obviously, which is a nightmare. There's it's the whole point was to be able to repurpose C so that I can write code on the JVM. But to use JNI, I have to write more C code. It seems like it's going the wrong direction. Nobody else makes that compromise. So then obviously let's not talk about that. And then I remember there's FFA from java.net. Is that the same thing as your FFI?
Very similar, yeah. So what everybody has been working towards over the years is a way to integrate these managed runtimes with their own heaps and their own garbage collectors with native libraries that have basically their own memory model, their own way of doing method calls. And so we've had things like FFA on the JVM. We've had JNA for a long time, Java Native Access, which basically just has a little stub of JNI code to do the calls for you to the C logic. We have our own ecosystem in JRuby called JNR, Java Native Runtime. It's an FFI plus we have a whole bunch of POSIX functions already bound for you We had Unix sockets available before they were part of the JDK, that kind of stuff. And now with Project Panama having official support for native function calls built into the VM and built in such a way that even the JIT can get involved and optimize those calls. So now you can actually see in the JITted code that comes out of your Java application a direct call into a native library, get the data back, manipulate it, and put it back on the Java heap. And finally, all of these runtimes are getting to that point where they can build and optimize native access without having to write C code to do it.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just wondering about that because it's a evergreen question for me, which is how do I integrate with the wide world of C these days? Obviously, Project Panama. When you're saying it can JIT, like if I use JLink and I generate a bunch of headers and stubs in Java code, does the JVM JIT all that stuff?
Yes, yeah. It actually knows. And if you dig inside there, the real trick is that it's actually using invoke dynamic inside Panama. But the invoke dynamic method handles that it has are basically hooked up to a native function. And it says, here's how the JVM can make this call, inline all of that logic and optimize it, and then make that call as directly as possible. All done in the JIT and optimized.
Sorcery. Okay, so are there incompatibilities Ruby doesn't support annotations, does it?
Right. So this is an interesting part
for me.
Yeah, for you. Exactly. We have gone back and forth on how to support that the typical Java pattern of I'm going to write some Java code, I'm going to mark it up with some annotations, I'm going to compile that into a class, and then it has all the data needed on disk for a framework like Spring Boot to pick up and run with, right?
You've heard of us.
There is no such thing in Ruby as a compiled script or a compiled class. It all is built at runtime. And really, you don't even declare a class in Ruby. You open up a new class object and start stuffing methods into it, and that becomes your class. So there's not even a static view of what a class is. You can reopen that class and add more methods if you want to later on.
Yeah, duck typing.
So trying to figure out how to bridge that gap, we have built little compilers that have their own special Ruby language that will output a Java class with all the annotations, all the static types and stuff, but actually be Ruby. This is kind of prototypey and it sort of works. Most recently, I have played with basically a Spring Boot framework for JRuby that uses the Spring Boot wiring APIs internally from the Ruby script and says, okay, now I'm going to be a REST endpoint. Now I'm going to be a web front end. And wire it together the same way, but without the same level of annotations, without compiling a class on disk, doing all of that wiring at runtime, but with the Spring APIs.
Interesting. So you're setting up you're arranging objects in the same way as Spring arranges them after it's done the discovery through the annotations.
Right, exactly. We do have the capability in JRuby to say, take this Ruby class as it looks right now and turn it into a Java class that Java can see. It's not necessary for Ruby, so we don't do it all the time, but you can tell JRuby, turn this into a Java class. Here's all the signatures I want it to have. Here's all the annotations I want it to have. And then we can pass that into the Spring Boot wiring, which then picks up all the annotations and thinks it's just a Java object at that point.
Right. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. How do I, exactly. Can I write a library in Ruby, JRuby, and then use it from Java? Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yep, you absolutely can. The trick then is that same integration. There's nothing compiled on disk, so what does your Java code compile against? You often, what we recommend people do is figure out what your interfaces are, make those Java interfaces that are compiled on disk, and then use a little bit of wiring code to boot up JRuby and get an implementation of that interface. Then you're calling the library through the JRuby runtime, but it just looks like it's implementing a Java interface.
Like a facade. So the Java interface hide the JRuby stuff behind it.
Exactly. That gives you something that you can compile against, and it gives us something that we can implement and provide the functionality.
You're blowing my mind. I can't believe it's 2026. We are living in a world where I can write one of the most elegant, most productive, prolific languages out there, and do so with the kind of economies of scale and efficiencies that the best runtimes in the world have to offer. I am a huge fan of you and JRuby. For the last time, as we wind down here, a couple of questions I always ask. Three questions actually. Are you on the internet? Do you want to be found? And if so, where can people find you?
Absolutely. I am on the internet. The one of the quickest ways to find me would be to go to Hedius.com, which has information about all the JRuby services we provide. I am Hedius on pretty much every service. If you search for me, if you find someone else, let me know, because they're not me. I am on all the services. I would love to get connected with anybody that wants to know more about this. Hedius@hedius.com will reach me as email. And I'm happy to answer questions and try to support you in whatever JVM or JRuby endeavors you're working on. I've got my fingers in a lot of pies these days.
I know it. People don't know, but it's been I've been wooing you for this podcast for like a year. You're a very busy guy. I've been so glad you could take the time to hang out today, and thank you for everything you do. It's not even Christmas, but I always feel like there's some nice gift thanks to you. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Bye, everybody.